The realm of the Throne of Whispers was unlike anywhere else in Silken-Gate. There was no brilliance of refined dragon silk here, only a blanket of leaden gray. Waste threads, broken destinies, abandoned vows had gathered into vast brambles of silken thorns, murmuring as if millions of voices were whispering at once. Julian sat with his back against a slab of limestone, his breathing heavy. The cracks along his silk-transformed arm no longer glimmered with silver. Instead, a dull light seeped from them, making him look like an ancient porcelain relic on the verge of shattering. "Don't move," Elara said softly, her voice trembling. She knelt beside him, deft fingers using ash threads from Silverhold to try to stitch the fractures in his silk-formed flesh. "You don't have to waste your strength," Julian replied with a faint smile. "This price can't be reversed. When my heart starts hearing these whispers more clearly than its own beat, I know I'm about to become part of this place." Elara looked up at him, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I won't allow it. You are a disentangler, you don't get to be tangled into this heap of ruins." She reached for the silver scar on his wrist. Instantly, the whispers around them surged. They stopped being meaningless noise and began to take shape as fragmented memories. Within the mist of the Throne of Whispers, an image emerged. Elara's father standing before the original loom, his eyes filled with anguish as he watched a woman, her mother, slowly fade away to create the first golden thread for the king. Elara froze. The silver shears hidden in her sleeve vibrated violently. "My father, he wasn't a traitor because he wanted to destroy the kingdom," Elara whispered, tears falling onto Julian's silk-bound hands. "He wanted to destroy it because the kingdom wove its very existence from my mother's silent disappearance." Julian lifted his remaining human hand and gently raised her chin. He looked deep into her storm-filled eyes. "Each of our secrets is a flawed thread, Elara, but it's those flaws that make this tapestry singular." Their closeness now carried the weight of absolute understanding. And yet, in that very moment, another fracture revealed itself. Through the silver scar, Julian sensed a dark intention rising within Elara. She didn't just want to save him, she intended to use the silver shears to perform a forbidden rite, one that would transfer all of his corruption to the king. The cost would be her permanent loss of emotional sensation. "What are you planning, Elara?" Julian asked, his voice sharpening with warning. "I can see your thread turning the color of absolute cold." Elara withdrew her hand, unable to meet his gaze. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you alive. If living means never seeing you smile again, then that isn't salvation," Julian said, gripping her wrist where the silver scar burned angrily. "That's just another kind of chain." The trust that had only just begun to bloom between them wavered, shaken by the most extreme form of devotion, protecting the other at the cost of oneself. The whispers of the Throne of Whispers grew louder, as if mocking the futile struggle of two souls trying to reach each other within a rotting reality. Far away, dark silhouettes of the royal hunters began to appear along the leaden cliffs. The time for truth and sacrifice was running out. Julian's silk-transformed hand tightened around Elara's wrist. The cold from his porcelain-white joints seeped through her skin, stealing her breath. In the leaden-gray space of the Throne of Whispers, the silver scars on both their wrists no longer glowed softly. Instead, they flickered with a warning red, the color of intentions twisted by desperation. "You see it, don't you?" Elara trembled, her eyes wet yet stubborn. "You see what I'm about to do, and you hate me for it." "I don't hate you," Julian said lowly, each word tearing free like ripped silk. "I am heartbroken that you turn yourself into an unfeeling statue just to preserve a hollow shell like me. You want to use forbidden weaving to remake a heart trade. Every emotion you have to shove this petrification onto the man on the throne." "But, Elara, if you can no longer love, if you can no longer feel pain, then who will be standing in front of me?" Elara yanked her hand free and stepped back. The silver shears in her grip flashed with a cold gleam. "The one who saved you. That's enough. I've already lost my father, my mother to this kingdom. I will not lose you as well to that old man's rot." The fracture between them burst open in the very heart of the Whispering Valley. The trust they had built through nights of flight now wavered beneath the weight of love itself, love so vast it made one willing to destroy oneself to protect the other. Suddenly, the rustling of waste threads around them fell silent. A dreadful stillness settled, and then, from the gray cliffs above, tens of thousands of golden threads cascaded down with lightning speed. This was no ordinary dragon silk, but golden binding silk, the kind used to imprison the most dangerous criminals of the crown. "Found them," the marshal's voice echoed from every direction. "Your discord has been a splendid gift to our hunt." The hunters did not strike with blades. They commanded the golden silk to weave into a colossal net, sealing the space around Julian and Elara. Wherever the threads brushed the ground, stone disintegrated into dust, proof of the crown's annihilating magic. Julian tried to raise his hand to unravel the space, but a massive crack split open across his chest, where the white silk had crept close to his heart. He collapsed, a murky silver light leaking from the fracture. Julian, Elara screamed, rushing to him despite the descending golden net. "Don't use the shears. Don't perform that rite." Julian gasped, clutching the hem of her dress. "Please." Elara looked at the golden net, now only meters away, then at the man she loved, whose face was slowly turning to stone. The agony of choosing between keeping her promise to him and saving his life tore her soul in two. She lifted the silver shears, their blade aimed toward her own heart, the starting point of the ritual that would trade away her emotions. A dull thud rang out as the golden net engulfed them, locking every movement. But in that instant, Julian spent his last reserve of strength to shove Elara's hand aside, knocking the shears off course, so they carved only a shallow cut across her shoulder. They were bound together inside a magnificent yet lethal golden cocoon. In its darkness, their breaths mingled, but their trust lay cracked. They had been captured, and worse than soldiers was the truth that they had no longer been honest with each other about the price they were willing to pay. "They'll take us back to the palace," Julian whispered in the dark, sorrow heavy in his voice. "And this time, the king won't let you hold the shears again." Elara closed her eyes. Hot tears fell onto the cold golden silk. The fragile calm of earlier chapters had shattered, leaving behind the bitter aftertaste of a bond warping under the crushing weight of fate. Inside the cocoon of golden silk, space shrank until it was suffocating. The radiant gold light did not bring warmth. It exuded a coercive coldness that pressed down on the lungs. Julian and Elara were forced to sit facing one another, their limbs tightly bound by golden threads, every attempt to move sending sharp pain through their bodies. Julian rested his head against the inner wall of the cocoon. His breathing was heavy, threaded with a faint hissing sound, like fibers stretched beyond their limit. The porcelain white silk had spread across his chest, encasing part of his heart. He did not look at Elara. His gray eyes were now filmed with a cloudy sheen, reflecting a consciousness withdrawing deep within itself to resist the gaze of the weaving eye. "Why won't you say anything?" Elara broke the silence, her voice hoarse after tears had run dry. "Are you angry with me for trying to save you that way?" "I'm not angry, Elara," Julian replied, his voice echoing like it came from the depths of a cavern. "I've just realized that the more we try to reweave fate according to our own will, the tighter this knot becomes. You were willing to trade away your emotions. Do you know that those very emotions are the last threads keeping me from turning entirely to stone?" Elara lowered her head, her bound hands trembling in the golden restraints. "I just couldn't stand watching you disappear. Your disappearance would leave a void no fabric in this world could ever cover." The cocoon suddenly lurched violently. They were being transported back toward the palace of Silken-Gate, through tiny gaps in the golden silk. Elara glimpsed the ashen forests of Silverhold falling away, replaced by towering spires glittering with the court's false opulence. "Listen to me," Julian said abruptly, urgency flickering behind his dulled eyes. "When we reach the palace, the king will use the silver scars on our wrists to activate the loom. He needs our discord. He feeds on pain and betrayal to weave the thread of dominion. Don't let him see you falter." Elara looked down at her wrist. The silver scar pulsed steadily, casting a dim crimson glow. She understood then that every argument, every doubt between her and Julian was the most valuable fuel the king could harvest. "Then what am I supposed to do?" she whispered, lifting her bound hand to touch the cold silk covering his chest. "Be silent." Julian closed his eyes. "Silence is the only shield left to us. Don't weave another emotion into this space." The cocoon came to a halt with a dull, resonant thud. The golden silk peeled itself apart, revealing the lavish yet suffocating expanse of the palace's grand hall. The king stood waiting, his eyes burning with a monstrous satisfaction. Around him, black dragons circled, exhaling strands of deep violet silk, the color of subjugation. "Welcome home, my children." The king spread his arms, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. "You've brought me the finest material of all, a fractured love." The marshal stepped forward, roughly hauling Elara to her feet. Two guards dragged Julian upright as well, his body stiff and heavy like a half-finished bust. They were shoved toward the original loom, where the cracks from Chapter 10 still gapped, leaking the gray lifeblood of the kingdom. "Begin weaving the final chapter of your freedom," the king commanded. Elara looked at Julian. His face remained expressionless, his gaze fixed on empty air. The silence between them was no longer shared understanding, it was a yawning abyss. She knew that if she placed her hands on the loom now, with a heart full of resentment, she would be the one to weave chains for the entire world. The aftertaste of betrayal and painful bargains was more bitter than ever. One more step, and there would be no path left to retreat. The grand hall of Silken-Gate Palace sank into an atmosphere thick with coercion. The king's deep violet silks coiled tightly around Julian's and Elara's feet, forcing them to stand before the original loom. The massive stone frame shuddered violently, its cracks exuding a pressure that warped the very air around it. "Touch it." The king stood behind them, his breath carrying the stench of rotting silk. "Use your silver scars, use the pain you've just inflicted on one another, and weave me the thread of dominion." Julian lifted his remaining human hand, trembling, and placed it upon the source thread. At once, the silver scar around his wrist flared with the furious red light. Through the magical connection, his most secret memories began to leak outward, pouring directly into the loom. Elara was forced to place her hand upon the threads as well. In that instant, a flood of Julian's thoughts crashed into her mind. She saw an image from 10 years earlier, a younger Julian standing at the edge of a purge in a weaver's village. He had not merely been a witness, he had been the untangler who identified the hidden knot protecting her family, enabling the guards to break through her father's defenses. Elara recoiled, eyes wide as she turned to the man beside her. It was you who led them to my father?" Julian did not turn his head, but fine cracks appeared across the white silk creeping along his neck. I was only a tool back then. I didn't know what they would do to your family." "You knew," Elara screamed, the agony of betrayal eclipsing any physical wound. "You knew my secret from the beginning." She realized then that the marriage, this meeting, might have been part of his plan all along, a guilty attempt to mend an unforgivable wrong. The king laughed, delighted. "Exactly. A devoted untangler burdened with remorse, and a weaver fueled by hatred. The fusion of regret and rage is the most perfect material for this tapestry." The rift of trust ruptured completely, and the magic of the silver scars corrupted. Instead of weaving a radiant golden thread, the loom began to spew forth black, bristling strands studded with cruel barbs. They wrapped around Julian's body, piercing through the white silk, consuming him. Julian collapsed with a strangled cry. The petrification surged violently. White silk climbed to his chin, swallowing half his face. "Stop it." Elara tried to wrench her hand free, but the black threads locked her wrist to the loom. She stared at Julian, the man she had just begun to love, and the same man who carried blood debt to her family. The inner conflict left her frozen. The absolute trust they had forged in Silverhold lay in ruins. The original loom erupted with a thunderous crack. The entire hall convulsed as a wave of negative energy born from their shattered bond exploded outward, shattering the palace's stained glass windows. The king seized a spool of glowing violet black thread, dominion itself, woven from betrayal. He had obtained exactly what he wanted. The guards dragged Elara brutally away from the loom, throwing her into the depths of the palace dungeons. Julian remained where he fell, a near-complete half-statue of silk, unmoving and mute. They were still within the same fortress, yet the distance between them had grown wider than 1,000 valleys of mist. The total collapse of trust brought Act 2 to an end, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste and a future as tangled and hopeless as threads no longer meant to be undone. The dungeons of Silken-Gate Palace were not built from stone or brick, but woven from discarded dragon silk cords, damp fibers capable of draining every trace of magic from those imprisoned within. Elara sat curled in a dark corner, her wrists bound by rings of deep violet thread. The silver scar around her wrist had dulled, now no more than an ash-gray mark devoid of warmth. In her mind, the image replayed over and over like a broken reel, Julian pointing the guards toward her village 10 years ago. Every moment of care, every gentle look he had given her during their flight, now seemed like calculated gestures of atonement. "An untangler," Elara whispered, her voice choking in the darkness. "You untangle the world, yet you are the one who tied the knot of my pain." Suddenly, the dungeon door screeched open. The king stepped inside, a radiant spool of violet black thread in his hand, the strand woven from their betrayal. Its glow cast an eerie light across his unnaturally youthful face, revealing eyes glittering with ambition. "You see, Weaver," the king smiled as he approached the bars. "Truth is a most exquisite poison. It allowed me to perfect the thread of dominion. Even now, its fibers are spreading throughout the kingdom, slipping into the minds of every citizen, binding them forever to my will." "You're a monster." Elara looked up, hatred blazing in her eyes. "You used both of us as sacrificial tools." "Used?" The king waved a hand, conjuring a veil of silken mist in the air. "No, I have honored him." Within the mist, Elara saw the grand hall. The original loom had been repaired with blackened threads, and at its center, Julian hung suspended by thousands of strands of dark violet silk. His entire body had turned to white porcelain thread. Only his eyes remained open, empty, lifeless, stone gray. He was no longer human. He had become the heart of the loom, the living power source sustaining the king's dominion. "He no longer feels pain," the king said with satisfaction. "He has reached the highest state of an untangler, becoming one with destiny itself." Elara felt her chest constrict, though she hated him for the truth of his past. Seeing him reduced to a hollow relic tore at her heart. Suddenly, the silver scar on her wrist trembled ever so faintly, a single weak pulse, a heartbeat from Julian, traveling through the remnants of a bond not yet completely severed. "He's still there," Elara realized, a fragile spark of hope igniting within the ashes of shattered trust. "The silver knot hasn't vanished entirely." The king turned away, leaving her with a final, chilling decree. "Tomorrow, when the sun rises, I will weave the final chapter of freedom. And you remain here and watch as this world becomes the perfect silk according to my design." The dungeon door slammed shut. Elara lowered her head and drew out the silver shears, still hidden within the secret lining of her dress. Their blades no longer gleamed. They were stained with the darkness of sacrifice. She knew that to save him and to save the kingdom, she would have to commit an act beyond forgiveness. The consequences were closing in, and the final price would be paid with the last sacred fragment of her soul. The darkness within the dungeons of Silken-Gate seemed to thicken, devouring the faint glow emanating from the silver scar on Elara's wrist. She leaned back against the wall woven from discarded silk, feeling the cold seep into her bones. Each of her breaths formed a thin mist that vanished almost instantly into the gloom. Her trembling fingers reached for the scar. It no longer pulsed with the red of anger, but beat with the steady rhythm weak, yet unimaginably persistent. Julian, she whispered his name, a name that once carried warmth, now tinged with the aftertaste of a deep, merciless cut to the heart. Elara closed her eyes, forcing away the images of betrayal from 10 years ago. She focused her entire mind on the silver scar, applying the soul-weaving technique the old woman of Silverhold had taught her. She was not weaving silk, she was weaving a bridge between souls. Suddenly, the dungeon dissolved. Elara found herself standing in an expanse of absolute white, perfectly still. This was Julian's mind, completely petrified by the king's magic. In the center stood Julian, motionless. His body had become a seamless statue of porcelain white silk, his pale gray eyes staring into nothingness. "Don't come here, Elara," a voice resonated not in sound, but as a painful vibration inside her consciousness. "Why?" Elara stepped closer despite the cold radiating from him. "So I can finally see the truth you hid from me?" Within the white void, strands of memory began to appear, raw, undeniable, far more truthful than anything the king had shown her. She saw Julian 10 years ago, his face drenched in tears as he was forced to reveal her family's location. But she also saw what the king had concealed. Before the guards arrived, Julian had secretly woven a protective thread into her father's fate. That single thread had prevented her father from being erased entirely from existence, condemning him instead to exile at the borders. Julian had carried the hatred of the kingdom and her hatred just to preserve the smallest sliver of hope for her family. Each patch of white silk overtaking his body was not merely the cost of magic, but a scar of silent protection. "You were always protecting me." Elara collapsed before his porcelain form, her heart breaking under the weight of such a devastating misunderstanding. "And I wove my hatred into a weapon for the king to use. It wasn't your fault." Julian's presence stirred faintly within the mindscape. "Your hatred was real, and your love was real too." That contradiction is what allowed the king to create a flawed thread. He believes he has forged the perfect thread of dominion, but he doesn't know there's a knot within it, one only you can undo. Julian's stone hand reached out and brushed her cheek. There was no physical sensation, yet warmth flooded Elara's chest. "He's using me to spread enslavement across Silken-Gate," Julian continued, his voice growing weaker. "You must use the silver shears, cut the source at my heart. It's the only way to free the kingdom and shatter the loom. If I do that, you'll disappear forever." Elara sobbed. "I vanished long ago, Elara," he replied gently. "Only you can weave a new beginning from these ashes." The vision shattered. Elara jolted awake in the dungeon, gasping for breath. On her wrist, the silver scar now shone with a pure white light, completely driving back the dark violet hue of domination. She looked down at the silver shears in her hand. They were no longer tainted, but gleamed with the light of deliverance. She rose to her feet, her eyes burning with unshakable resolve. She would not let his sacrifice be in vain. She would break into the grand hall, face the king, and make one final cut, the cut that would reweave freedom for all. Even if the price was her eternal solitude. The palace bells rang, announcing the dawn. The final chapter of fate had begun to turn.